Greetings, my fellow philosophical thinkers. Thank you for tuning to LL3-Podcast. My name is Kirk, transmitting from the beautiful realms of planet Earth. Today's date is Tuesday, September 16th, 2025 is episode 1897. Pam Bondi's Wrong About Hate Speech and the Charlie Kirk Free Speech Act. Before I proceed, you can find me on multiple social media sites and podcast channels. Just type in LokiLuck3, LokiLuck Roman number 3 with 3 eyes, or the LokiLuck Roman number 3 podcast. Furthermore, if you have any questions, comments, recommendations, all that good stuff, whatever you do, please use decorum. Hit me via email to LL3.podcast@proton.me. If you want to donate, go to paypal.me or cash.app/LokiLuck3. And if you want to follow me at Steemit, give me a little crypto love there. It's at LL3-Podcast. At Steemit once again. Sorry about that. Yes, so I was informed that Robert Redford passed. Great Hollywood actor for his time, and Thomas Lindbergh, I believe his name is, Mr. Lindbergh from At the Gates, Lock Up, a few other projects he did. Death metal vocalist, growling and all that. And it's fun because I do, he was 52 when he passed. He had cancer, which was very, very young. I had an opportunity to work a show many years ago with Morbid Angel and Dissection in 1996. And I seen him again in 2016, 20 years later. Hey, same town. It was entertaining, don't be wrong. I have fun with that style of music. Doesn't mean I want to cut people's wrists and all that good stuff. Hey, look at Corpse Grinder, George Fisher. He likes to give stuffed animals, use the whole machines to pick them up and all that, and give it to the children that need. So he's a good folk. Remember him from Monstrosity when he first came out, and the bassist Mark Van Zerp said, "Dude, you gotta check this guy as a sick bastard." So I'm like, saw him, many years ago before Monstrosity got signed. And yeah, he was an interesting chap. So I love his exhibition on stage. And when Cannibal Corpse picked him, I said they chose wisely. I'm not a big fan of them personally, but I do have a token of appreciation. Entertainment. Not my life's blood. But there was a lot of stuff I could tell you for a very long time. But yeah, Lindbergh, may still be forever free as well. Fuck cancer, excuse my language, but omit it. Be vigilant on your health the best you can, my friends. Let's value it to the core. But I was just having, let's see, all the paradigm game, the blame game, the lefties, the righties who have more crime. People show me statistics on Facebook. You know what? This whole paradigm game is meek, pathetic, and unmerited. George Washington warned us about that in his farewell address, which the upcoming anniversary will be this Friday. 1796. And he did warn us about the dangers of factions in the young republic. And it's not really the same. They go left-wing extremists, right-wing Nazis, and it's like so been diluted and misconstrued. And the truth of the matter is, folks, what the Nazis and the commies and the socialists have in common, they supported bigger government, left. And I recall extreme right-wing is less government, but like I said before, it's been misappropriate on what they're doing, trying to get us all triggered with buzzwords and all that good stuff. You hear about the thing now, trans shooters, before that, white supremacists. I can go on and I can go on. It's just the Dr. Moreau effect. I do encourage people to check that out on Dr. Moreau and read the book or listen to it. It is public domain. LibriVox has one available. You can probably hit it on all the other video channels. It's the same old song and dance. And we all know one thing is that George Orwell warned us about it in his book 1984 and Animal Farm. Plus, what's that other gentleman's name? Edward Bernays, who wrote the book Propaganda, Public Relations Man. He wrote it, which was published in 1928. He's climaxing in his. Think before you react. Don't let these propaganda machine get to you. Media manipulation, and etc. That's why you always need to study history, like what occurred in Nazi Germany, even Rwanda. The 100-day Holocaust, people call it. So remember, the Holocaust not just only happened one time. There are several of them in the 20th century alone, and before that, and now. So please, think critically, observe responsibly. Don't jump the gun. No false starts. And I say that with love and in good faith. Well, enough of that. I want to be reading here from thefire.org. Came out today. Why everything Pam Bondi said about free speech is wrong. The nation's top law enforcement officer doesn't understand that there is no free speech exception to the First Amendment, and that's scary. It was co-written by Aaron Terr and Angel Eduardo. As it reads here, we get it. Not everyone is a free speech expert. A huge part of our job at FIRE is educating the public about their First Amendment rights, scope of free speech law, and the foundational principles that makes free expression so important. Most people don't have the time to get in the weeds like we do. So it's understandable for the average American to sometimes get things wrong about free speech. But when you're Attorney General of the United States like Pam Bondi, you really should know better. That's right, on your oath. And I'll continue on. While discussing the assassination of Charlie Kirk and campus anti-Semitism, the Katie Miller podcast, Bondi said the Justice Department would investigate and prosecute incidents of hate speech while she's trying to go into damage control mode and walk back some of her mistakes. It is important to correct our nation's chief law enforcement officer on what is and isn't protected expression. There is links for that. I'll take you right to that segment. And I do find this chilling myself. I'll continue on. There's free speech and there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie, for that in our society. In other words, this day and age, we should compromise our liberties, our natural rights, to be patriotic. On Pam Bondi quote. I'll continue. This is to put it bluntly, absolutely false. So-called hate speech is free speech. The idea that hate speech is a separate and unprotected category of expression is one that we, unfortunately, have had to debunk time and time again. The act is there is no hate speech exception to the First Amendment, and there can't be. The Supreme Court has rejected the notion on multiple occasions, and the reasons for this should be obvious to someone in Bondi's position. There's a free speech podcast on this matter. You can check it out for yourselves. What constitutes hate speech is inherently subjective, so it is impossible to narrowly define it in a way what passes constitutional muster, let alone in a way that doesn't empower the government to target speech is disfavors. As Supreme Court Justice John Marshall Harlan II wrote in 1971's Cohen versus California, one man's vulgarity is another man's lyric. Or as Justice Samuel Alito wrote in Mattel versus Tam almost 4 decades later, the proudest boast of our free speech jurisprudence is that we protect the freedom to express the thought that we hate. In that case, the court unanimously found that the government couldn't deny a trademark to an Asian American band called the Slants because it found the name disparaging. Some consider criticism of Israel or Black Lives Matter to be hate speech. Others believe criticizing LGBTQ plus advocacy or Christian conservatism fits the description. And some, like President Trump, want to push the idea that even critical news coverage of an elected official, namely him, can be a form of hate speech. Personally, I don't listen to those clowns anyway. Just laugh at them, mock them, ridicule them. I do it all the time. But I'll continue on. Apart from the escapably subjective sentiment that hate speech, is any speech I hate. The only thing on which proponents of treating hate speech as protected agree is desire to punish it. This apparently includes Pam Bondi. We will absolutely target you, go after you, if you're targeting anyone with hate speech. It is absolutely chilling. It's why carving out a hate speech exception to the First Amendment is so dangerous. It grants the government the power not only to decide what constitutes hateful speech, but to punish it. And that dual empowerment inevitably facilitates attacks on the right to dissent, criticize, and hold accountable whoever is in power. Nothing more is antithetical to what America stands for than enabling free federal speech police. Earlier this morning, Bondi published a post on X attempting to clarify her comments after a wave of negative response. Unfortunately, she only introduced more confusion. This is what she says. Hate speech that crosses the line into threats of violence is not protected by the First Amendment. It's a crime. For far too long, we've watched the radical left normalize threats, call for assassinations, and cheer on political violence. That era is over. While Bondi is correct that speech satisfying the stringent standard for what constitutes a true threat of violence is not protected by the First Amendment, she seems to effectively equate with so-called hate speech. She goes on, under 18 U.S. Code Section 875C, it is a federal crime to transmit any communication containing any threat to kidnap any person or any threat to injure the person or another. Likewise, 18 U.S. Code Section 876 and 18 U.S. Code Section 115 make it a felony to threaten public officials, members of Congress, or their families. Bondi is narrowly correct here. In 2003's Virginia v. Black, the Supreme Court defined true threats as those statements where the speaker means to communicate a serious expression of an intent to commit an act of unlawful violence to a particular individual or group of individuals. However, Bondi quickly shows that she doesn't understand this narrow exception, which doesn't cover abstract advocacy of violence or cheering on political violence, speech that is, in fact, protected. You cannot call for someone's murder. You cannot swat a member of Congress. You cannot dox a conservative family and think it will be brushed off as free speech. These acts are punishable crimes, and every single threat will be met with the full force of the law. Actually, you can call someone's murder as long as you're not inciting it. In the landmark Supreme Court case, Brandenburg versus Ohio, the court established that there is a difference between speech promoting unlawful action and the unlawful action itself. That speech only loses First Amendment protection when it directs to and likely to produce imminent lawless action. The reason for this is to protect our ability to engage in sharp, critical, and even incendiary language, because political speech, as the Supreme Court noted in 1969, Watts versus the United States, is often vituperative, abusive, and inexact, and we don't want a particular politician or administration deciding for everyone when it's too hateful or offensive. Like hate speech, Bondi also fails to define doxing. It often refers to the intentional release of an individual's personal identifying information without their permission, though may use the term more liberally, for an example, to refer to posting video of ICE agents performing their duties in public. Disclosing truth information about others is generally protected unless done in a way that amounts of a true threat or incitement. Mercifully, Bondi ended her tweet with something to which we don't object. Free speech protects ideas, debates, even dissent, but it does not and will never protect violence. You'll get no argument from us there. Words are words and violence is violence, and their distinction makes all the difference. Protect speech, punish violence. What Bondi fails to recognize is the critical importance of protecting ideas, debate, and dissent is why there is no First Amendment exception for so-called hate speech and why there never should be. Kirk himself would have agreed in his tweet. Hate speech does not exist legally in America. There's ugly speech, there's gross speech, there's evil speech. And all of it is protected by the First Amendment. Keep America free. He posted this May 2nd, 2024. He was absolutely correct. Regardless what you think of him, he was pro-free speech. I talked about in my past episode as well on this matter. Pam Bondi and many others better start reviewing themselves before jumping to conclusions. And we've all been there, don't get me wrong, quoting yours truly, but in these particular political positions, you have an oath to protect. Protect and defend the U.S. Constitution at the federal level, the state, they're both, okay? Just to give you a heads up, and local also. What I was going to say, you always got to be vigilant when it comes to these. Even the goofballs, hacks from the so-called left, okay, use those totalitarian attributes too. Hate speech is free speech, and many of us, including the Fire, renounces it. That you always got to do it across the board, regardless. And even a man like myself, when I did my rallies and so forth, I don't really use vulgarity because that's not my thing. I bring out intellectual ammunition, and that's more effective. Even when you go to these commission meetings and so forth, you want to always utilize their language. If you're real critical of a certain measure, utilize their language, you'll drive them crazy. Because many of them are lawyers, so when you use the law against them, what they're trying to propose, they don't know what to say. They wig out. Okay, so it happened to me a couple of times, and people love it. And I don't even stress it or anything like that. I just lay down everything I can. So one thing I gotta say, that's to anyone. I could say Pam Bondi exhibited herself as Mrs. Merrick Garland, because remember what he did when the parents went to the school board meetings in their counties, and Merrick Garland considered them potential domestic terrorists. I don't know, and I did a show on that like 4 years ago, but you can look it up on my catalog on Spreaker and I think Podbean, yeah, a few places, and Spotify too for creators. But it just really amazes me. So it doesn't matter who's in there. You got to watch them all right? And don't get me wrong, let Donald Trump have fun with these people, call them fake news beakers, and just mock them back, because he's been witch hunted for all these years too. And you don't have to be a Trump lover to say that. It's just how I look at his presidency. If I'm critical, I'm going to have my facts rather than using rhetoric. But when you witch hunt one man, it's so juvenile. See, this is what happens when you got career politicians. Decentralization is the key. I always say we need to repeal the 17th Amendment. Okay, let the states do that. Let the states decide how they bring the Senate in, because the original Constitutional Republic is the president is an elected ambassador that was voted by the states the Senate are represented by their state, and the House represents the people. That's how it should be. But now, in all due time, it all got clustered. And we're still in that same predicament, at least since the mid-1860s, you can say. All right, but we can probably go a little bit before that. And so I'm going to be taking a little breather for the time being. I'm going to hit another article that's pertaining to this for the people need to know, and I'll be right back, so stay tuned. All right, so this one here is relevant on the article I've read about Pam Bondi on hate speech. This actually came out September 14th, 2021, so 24 years ago. A Bill of Rights culture is the only answer. Black Tuesday, which was September 11th during that time, and the Passive American. A Bill of Rights culture is the only answer. We must give up some of our freedoms to help combat terrorism. The predictable words and actions are beginning to spew from political, military, and law enforcement officials and their supporters. For safety, for security, for the greater good, they somberly tell us we must comply with their agendas. To be protected from terrorism, we must submit to more restrictions and our ability to travel, our freedom from arbitrary searches, on the privacy of our communications, on our right to bear arms, on our ability to conduct business hidden from the prying eyes of government. Senator Judd Gregg, Republican from New Hampshire, has called for a global prohibition on encryption products without backdoors for government surveillance. Travel regulators have banned knives on planes. Does this mean even pilots can't protect themselves and passengers against hijackers? ISPSs who are reluctant to cooperate with the FBI invasive carnivore program are now rushing to comply. The Senate, in the wake of Black Tuesday, voted to increase the FBI's authority to tap the phones of anyone suspected of terrorism. As we've seen, by all these random restrictions, we are all suspects in the eyes of the government. Perhaps most ominously of all, the Washington Post quoted House Democrat leader Richard Gephardt, Democrat from Missouri, as making the contradictory, but entirely predictable statement: we are in a new world where we have to rebalance freedom and security. We can't take away people's liberties, but we're not going to have all the openness and freedoms we've had. That's from the Washington Post. The Post then went on to describe how every war or crisis of the last 100 years has been used to increase government power, often in the most draconian way. Freelance supporters of the surveillance state are rushing to urge everyone to comply. One liberal talk show host responded to callers who complained that Big Brother policies at airports were a problem. Big Brother is the only thing holding us together. He offered no evidence to show how Big Brother made us safe on Tuesday, September 11th. We must think free, not patriotically jerk our knees. Soon, we may be at war, and as always, at such times, we'll be expected to pull together, do what our leaders tell us is necessary, and sacrifice more freedom in the name of safety and security or patriotism. And as a reality of the day of horror seeps in, who doesn't feel an urge to strike back, to get behind our government, to show those murdering bastards that they can't push Americans around, and to do whatever it takes to defend the greatest country on earth, even if that means sacrificing individual liberty to the cause. Whatever happens from here on out, we need to remember that Big Brother is not holding us together, that he never can and never will. We must remember that kind of restrictions on the liberties of ordinary Americans that were entirely ineffective in preventing the attacks on Tuesday, September 11, 2001, will not magically prevent future attacks merely because their severity is increased. What did all Big Brother's efforts do to prevent Tuesday's slaughter? the violations of freedom we've already been subjected to in the name of safety. Airport x-rays, ID checks, disarmament, body searches, and the whole gamut became a joke when the day arrived that we needed them to protect our country against the world's worst criminals. In fact, Daniel Pipes of the Wall Street Journal was quick to point out how the government's reliance on mass eavesdropping and tracking actually divert resources for more effective anti-terrorism methods, such as actually studying and infiltrating genuine terrorist groups. Yet now, the government proposes a giant national effort to do more of the same, to impose more effective, wasteful, and oppressive mass surveillance and restrictions. New restrictions on the freedoms of nonviolent people will do nothing to make America or the world safer. They'll make us less safe as well as less free. There are at least two reasons for this. The first is that more restrictions, more power placed in the hands of government will simply, in the long run, create more rage and therefore more desire to strike violently, as we also saw some restrictions like those that forbid armed citizens on planes also make it harder for Americans to protect themselves and their country. The second is something we observed. Tragically, those cell phone calls from 4 doomed hijacked planes, the fatal passivity and dependence that seem to be the coming norm in American behavior. Belly up, be passive, do as they say. I continue on. The passive, unthinking American. It appears how now that a handful of heroic passengers on one flight, having learned via telephone that 2 other hijacked planes had already smashed into the World Trade Center, decided not to allow themselves to be used as weapons of war. These passengers on United Flight 93 attacked the hijackers who were in control of the plane. Doomed in any case, they ended up dying in the woods and fields of rural Pennsylvania rather than passively allowing their captors to get away with an even more horrendous mass murder. And there's some, claims on it, but I'm just letting you know this is what they wrote. So I'll continue on. We also know that on at least one other flight, American Airlines Flight 77, which smashed into the Pentagon, passenger Barbara Olson learned from her husband, U.S. Solicitor General Theodore Olson, of the World Trade Center catastrophe. During 2 separate calls, Mrs. Olson, a well-known author and conservative television commentator, asked her husband what the pilot standing next to her in the back of the plane should do. Picture that. Passengers and crews have been herded. And note that word, well, herded. To the back of the plane, even the pilot, the leader, the chief decision maker does nothing. Can't think what to do. Can't act. Instead of attempting to save their own lives and the lives of others on the ground, what do? They expected a federal government official to make the decision for them. The evidence says that these people didn't even feel empowered to defend their own lives without first asking the advice or permission of Washington, D.C. And why should we have expected otherwise? Americans have been told repeatedly never to resist crime, always to submit to any demand a thug makes them. Always along for safety's sake, go along in order to avoid angering the criminal. We've been told always to submit as well to any demand made by anyone who appears to be in charge. These people on Flight 77 and presumably the 2 other flights were apparently so paralyzed by their conditioning that they couldn't assert themselves even when the alternative was certain death. Even as pathetically disarmed as they are, they could have battered the hijackers with their briefcases, with their shoes, their purses. They could overwhelm them with sheer numbers of bodies. They could have gouged at their eyes with fingers or car keys, could have knocked them unconscious with luggage from the overhead racks, could have tripped them, stomped them, tied them up with cords from audio headsets. But except on United Flight 93, they apparently did nothing. And so 3 planes flew sure and true into the heart of 3 American landmarks, slaughtering thousands. The only true security measure, a Bill of Rights culture. We must take back America as a country. We must make it free and independent again. No longer that would be ruler of its own people, and no longer playing at being the world's super cop. Only by doing that will earn the world's peace and respect. We must take our own individual lives and independent spirits back from the would-be rulers and criminals as well. If we consent passively to give up more freedoms, even temporarily or as an emergency measure, we'll be doing the opposite. We'll be less safe, less free. To restore American freedom and personal courage, we must restore the Bill of Rights in our country and in our hearts and minds. If we understand the Bill of Rights, we'll understand what we're fighting for and why. If we let it slip away, what's left won't be worth fighting for. This means not merely having an intellectual or legal understanding of the Bill of Rights. This means not merely memorizing the Bill of Rights or teaching it to our children. This means understanding the concepts of individual liberty that underlie the Bill of Rights, then living those concepts, breathing them, eating them, dreaming them, holding them as the most central values of our lives. In the same place, we hold our belief in the deity or our dedication to our families or to truth or justice. We must behave as free people, accept and encourage others to behave as free people, and have zero tolerance for anyone who abuses freedom or uses his authority to violate the Bill of Rights. If there was a time in history to get behind the Bill of Rights and promote it, it is now. If we yield to this mushy thinking that the road to freedom and safety lies in giving up freedom and the Bill of Rights, then we might as well bow down and in defeat right now. If we don't defend our rights, we'll have no rights. If we don't defend ourselves, our families, and our fellow citizens, and defend their freedoms, then our lives will be more vulnerable than those of cattle and sheep, and the America we end up with won't be the America we thought we were fighting for. If you want to be a passive herd beast, obey whatever the authority of the moment, be that a bureaucrat or a hijacker, tells you to do. Listen to their lies about safety and security and obey, obey, obey. But if you truly want to combat terrorism or terror war, learn the Bill of Rights, teach the Bill of Rights, and enforce the Bill of Rights with every action of your life. Fight back with the Bill of Rights. Even it's like this. It's like this is why it is relevant today. And there's a lot of stuff in there. Can be not talking about the article of Pam Bondi. However, we have to stand for what's right. Our freedom don't end where your feelings begin. Okay, so it's the same with free speech. Okay, we got natural rights. People have a habit of saying constitutional, and I admit yours truly have done it too. However, when you learn further about our inalienable rights, then you say natural. So I always recommend folks to get that habit of not saying constitutional rights. And it's all done with love and in good faith. And don't get me wrong, there's some folks out there who use that, and it drives me crazy. I go, what the hell are you doing? I just smack them inside the head with love. And many of them understand me. So that's why everyone in these United States has a duty to exercise our natural rights, which is the Bill of Rights culture. Government keep out. That includes Pam Bondi, regardless what party you're in, what your belief system is. You got some of the folks out there say we may have to restrict our Second Amendment. Bad history, because what happened? Because they try to use that with Charlie Kirk. Well, there's a time when a German representative, probably a diplomat, was trying to do peace. He got shot in the head, and it was claimed by a, quote, Zionist, allegedly, unquote. And what happened? What they done in Germany, was Nazi Germany, the 1968 Gun Control Act. That happened in 1938, which disarmed all the Jews. Okay, so Remember that, folks. If you don't learn from the past, we're damned to repeat it. I'm just wondering if Pam Bondi has knowledge of this. Because I can tell you, I can say one thing. She supported red flag laws in the great state of Florida. So I have a bone to pick with. Always be vigilant, whoever's in there. Never trust them, regardless who appoints. Well, I'm going to do my final segment, so stay tuned. All right, I'm going to do one more here. This came out a couple days ago from the Health Ranger, naturalnews.com. Why we need the Kirk Free Speech Act, a legal shield against the censorship industrial complex. This is written by Mike Adams. America is under siege, not from foreign invaders, but from a censorship industrial complex that has weaponized big tech, corporate media, universities, and government agencies to silence dissent, manipulate elections, and destroying the very foundation of our republic, free speech. The tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk, a young, dynamic conservative leader and youth organizer, was not just an act of violence, it was the unfortunate endpoint of a culture that has normalized the silencing of opposition. When free speech is censored, violence becomes the only remaining outlet for resistance. The First Amendment was designed to protect all speech, especially unpopular speech, from government tyranny. Yet today, Google, Facebook, Twitter, which is X, YouTube, Wikipedia, corporate media, and universities operate as de facto arms of the government, colluding with DHS, DOD, CIA, and foreign NGOs to blacklist, deplatform, and economically destroy anyone who challenges the official narrative. This is not hyperbole. Smoking gun documents from lawsuits like Missouri versus Biden and Brighttown versus Google prove that the U.S. government has been laundering censorship requests through overseas NGO to bypass constitutional protections. People like myself, Robert Kennedy Jr., Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones, and now Charlie Kirk all have been systematically erased from digital public squares simply for expressing views that contradict the pharmaceutical industrial complex, the climate cult, and the LGBTQ indoctrination agenda, or the military-industrial war machine. Enough is enough. It's time for Congress to pass the Charlie Kirk Free Speech Act, a landmark law that would outlaw viewpoint discrimination on all large platforms, fine violators $1 billion per day for algorithmic or manual censorship of protected speech, explicitly protect political, medical, scientific, religious, and any government speech, establishes a $1 trillion compensation fund for victims of censorship over the past decade. Sorry, folks, I just got tongue-tied there. Criminally prosecute executives who engage in systematic suppression of free expression. This is not about restricting speech, it's about restoring it. The First Amendment was never meant to protect corporate oligarchs who act as state-enforced thought police. If a platform functions as a modern public square, it must uphold public square rules. No censorship of lawful speech. And there's a video clip on here. You can check it out for yourselves. Very good stuff. I always love Mike Adams on his work. I found him for about almost 20 years. I'll continue on. The censorship industrial complex. How we got here. 1. Big tech nexus. A decade of collision. And it gives you a whole rundown of like Deep State Panic and Project Veritas, Twitter Shadow Band, and so forth. So we'll continue on. Number 2, the mechanics of censorship laundering. To bypass the First Amendment, government outsources censorship to foreign NGOs, fact checkers, AI-driven suppression, payment processors. This is money laundering for censorship. I'm not going to read in its entirety, but I'm just giving you some clues, giving you some input on this. You can read it for yourselves. I will leave the footnote on this as well on the page. 3, the human cost ruins lives, stifles debate and violence. Censorship does not suppress ideas, it destroys lives. It happened to Mike Adams, Kennedy, Tucker Carlson, and Charlie Kirk. When lawful speech is criminalized, violence becomes inevitable. The shooting of Charlie Kirk is a direct result of a culture that threats conservative viewpoints as dangerous and seeks to silence them by any means possible. And what do they say here about the Charlie Free Speech Act restoring the First Amendment? 1, define large platforms. 2, absolute ban on viewpoint discrimination. I'll give you samples of that. What's not protected? Direct incitement to violence, true threats, child pornography or exploitation, doxing and harassment. Number 3, $1 billion per day fines for censorship violations. Number 4, the $1 trillion censorship compensation fund. If anyone was deplatformed, demonetized, debanked, etc. Number 5, criminal penalties for executives who enforce censorship. Why this law is needed now? 1, the 2024 election is being rigged through censorship. 2, the AI thought police are here. How to make this law a reality? 1, grassroots pressure, including call your congressman, boycott big tech, support censored journalists. Number 2, legal and political strategy, file class action lawsuits against Google and other sites that violate First Amendment, push state attorneys to investigate sensitive collusion, demand that the Supreme Court rule that big tech is a public utility and must uphold free speech, vote with your dollars, divest from BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, the 3 firms that own big tech, use gold, silver, Bitcoin, privacy coins to bypass financial censorship, support parallel economics, farmers markets, homeschooling, decentralized social media, which I agree, always decentralized is important. We must choose free speech to avoid civil war. America's at a crossroads. It says here, option 1, we restore free speech to break the censorship industrial complex and return to a society where ideas compete fairly. Option 2, we allow the silencing to continue, watch more Charlie Kirks get shot, and descend into violence and tyranny. The Charlie Free Speech Act is not just a legal proposal, it is a last stand for liberty. We will be a nation of free citizens, or we will be a nation of censored serfs. The choice is ours. Act now before it's too late. The action item, you can share the article, email it to your congressman, boycott the big tech stuff, use Brave Search and all that good stuff, and support censored journalists. Prepare for legal battle. This will be a fight for our lives. Free speech is not negotiable. The Charlie Kirk Free Speech Act must pass. God bless America. God bless free speech. To give you a whole rundown too of this stuff, please support this man. And I agree completely because it's being unacceptable. And even yours truly has been shadow banned on a couple of sites myself, so I know how it is. I'm not a big person in this industry. I just like speaking my mind, giving my input, and I always like to hear what you folks have to say. And there's times I do, and I appreciate it. Sometimes I get something, oh, you suck. Hey, that's fine. But thanks for let me know. It doesn't bother me one bit. I always try to learn to improve myself as well. But it's been a long time been doing this, and now I have a day job, so I may get a little tired at times, so please forgive me. But one thing we gotta say is we gotta support our natural rights as a whole with no exceptions. And without us, the government, the big tech companies, corporate media are nothing. So we all have the power, folks. Don't let them suppress it. And that will be it. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share us throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, recommendations, all that good stuff, whatever you do, please use decorum. Hit me via email to LL3.podcast@proton.me, and I will leave the footnotes on this episode on the pages so you can check it out for yourselves. If you want to donate, go to PayPal.me or cash.app/LokiLuck3. If you want to follow me on Steemit, give me a little crypto love. I'm at LL3-Podcast. If you want to support the fire, JPFO, or the natural news, that'd be very cool. And I understand that the Second Amendment Foundation runs it now. So it's a little bit different because the late Aaron Zoma may as well be forever free. And I'll be very honest with that organization. There's some controversies. However, they're at least trying to keep something alive. And they're fulfilling his legacy by leaving the archives alone and cherish them. So you got the decisions, folks. Use it wisely. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that the maniacal resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading love. And may your guardian spirits be with you.